Professor Zine Magubane, Acting CEO of AISA, Dr. Sadiq Sayed, Representative of the UN Women, Ms. Edith Wanjo from the Graça Machel Trust, former and current ministers and deputy ministers, the delegates from the United Nations, presenters, facilitators, all participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is really for me a wonderful privilege to welcome you today on this glorious South African Saturday, where we also celebrate International Women's Day, to TMALI and to UNISA. And I say it's a South African Saturday because after a week of rain, I thought I saw the sunshine as I drove into UNISA this morning. And I want also to thank and welcome Professor Zine and recognize his role and the staff of TMALI for the work that they have been doing. We are celebrating International Women's Day today. And this is a day of reflection for me. Firstly, a reflection on how far we have come as women. Women play a significant role in the struggle against oppression and gender inequality in South Africa. Many individually, others through organizations such as the ANC Women's League, Federation of South African Women, and labor organizations. The year 1994 and the adoption of the interim constitution with the Bill of Rights paved the way for the constitutional protection and promotion of women's rights in South Africa. In truth, many important historic moments followed after this adoption of the Constitution. And it has been said that this generation of women are, in the words of Alice Walker, the ones we have been waiting for. Because this generation has the power to change and to shape the legacy of women in South Africa in a definite way. International Women's Day is also a day of celebration, for the reality of change is slowly but steadily coming to fruition. For example, and I'm just going to give you two examples, there are many examples. On 15 July 2012, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma was elected as the chairperson of the African Union Commission, making her the first woman to lead an organization like this. And if you are following the news, you will notice that the most publicized criminal trial in South African history is currently presided over by a woman judge, Justice Prof Zine Magubane. And I must mention this because this is a victory for women in a profession who barely 100 years ago did not allow women to become lawyers in South Africa, as they were regarded as being too irrational and emotional to practice law. Despite the achievements of women in South Africa, there is still much work to be done. South Africa has, for example, one of the highest crime rates against women and children in the world. And of course, we all know the criminal trial I refer to is also a trial involving violence against a woman. We are, on a daily basis, shocked by the brutal and senseless violence against women and children in this country. And we can only be able to change this state of affairs if there is a fundamental change of attitude towards women in general. The importance of collective thinking sites and forums as collective thinking sites for women in South Africa to address gender issues must be emphasized. Collective thinking sites shape policy, and policy in turn by the state. If implemented correctly, policy also shapes the views and attitudes of society at large. Evidence of this can be found in the predominantly Muslim country of Senegal, where, following the adoption of a new parity law, the proportion of female parliamentary representatives jumped from 23% to 43% in the 2012 elections. African countries are linked and share each other's struggles and victories. And we need to think about how we can learn from feminists around the continent and continue to keep the dialogue between countries and each other open, so that all women across the continent can benefit from the struggles and victories of each other. There are numerous examples of countries where there's a vast number of women in their country's legislative seats. And I can refer to Rwanda, to Mozambique, Angola, Tanzania, and Uganda. And then even in South Africa, where we have about 40% of the seats held by women. And that is a vast change from 20, 30 years ago. And I think this roundtable creates an ideal opportunity for all of us to consider a number of issues and things as we go forward. We need, for example, to think about the benefits of advocacy and the benefits this has on communities. And especially, I think, if we think of the issues around gay and lesbian rights in Africa. And also, we need to think how to ignite young women to take part in these discussions and to become advocates in their daily realities. In addition, I believe this International Women's Day may also consider things like giving a critical understanding of the patriarchal state in all the complex relationships at the national, regional, continental and global levels. We need to critique women's place in the current post-independence capitalist economic, political, legal and social infrastructure. We need to look at citizenship as an outcome of struggle for social change, and we need to recognize the intersections between the destructive practices and policies of increasing militarized states and the plunder and destruction of natural environments. And then also the building of feminist movements and infusing our communities with feminist ideas and perspectives. Ladies and gentlemen, I trust that you will have an excellent 2014 roundtable and that this roundtable will really ignite ideas and solutions to the struggles that women face daily. I thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I now come to the final part of what I do here this morning, and that is to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Zine Magubane. Zine Magubane is an associate professor of the sociology at Boston College. She also holds a courtesy appointment in the Department of African and African Diaspora Studies at Boston College. Her areas of specialization include social theory, sociology of post-coloniality, race and ethnicity, globalization, race and popular culture, gender and sexuality, and the sociology of African societies. Professor Magubane is the author of Bringing the Empire Home, Race, Gender and Class in Britain and the Colonial South Africa by University of Chicago Press, published in 2004. She's also the editor of two other books, Postmodernity Sexuality and African Studies, published by African World Press in 2004, and with writer Magubane, Race, Gender and the Status of Black South African Women in the Academy, published by UNISA in 2005. She's currently writing a book entitled Brand the Beloved Country, Africa in Celebrity Culture. Professor Magubane, who completed her BA in 1991 at Princeton, where she was an MMUF fellow, has authored numerous referee journal articles and published chapters on a wide range of topics. From 1997 to 2005, Professor Magubane was employed first as an assistant and then associate professor of sociology at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Professor Magubane also taught at the University of Cape Town in South Africa in 1996 and 1997. And she served as a research associate with the Human Sciences Research Council in South Africa, in Pretoria, South Africa, from 1998 to 2000. Professor Magubane completed an MA and PhD in sociology at Harvard University. It is now my privilege to request Professor Magubane to come forward and to deliver the keynote address. Prof Magubane.
halfway around the world, all the way here, and keep it busy for several days, so I very much appreciate it. And it is my very special honor to be asked to speak to you on International Women's Day. When I was asked to speak, initially I was told that I should speak on African women's thought leadership for the 21st century. And I thought to myself, that is a very big topic. I wonder what I will say. However, the breadth of the topic was very refreshing, and it allowed me to really sit back and contemplate what have we come through, and even more importantly, what should we be focusing on as we move into the future. As we sit with 14 years behind us in the 21st century, it is clear that the transformation in politics, economics, and social life that the African continent has witnessed between the dawn of the 21st century and today is nothing short of epic. We have seen a new country, South Sudan, added to our map, protests swept through Egypt, the government of Mali was robbed, Nigeria saw the rise of Boko Haram, South Africa and the world wept as we bid a final farewell to our beloved leader. The social structures of continent-wide societies have undergone tremendous change in the course of a single generation. In what other time period, we may ask ourselves, have so many African men and women been so totally exposed at such fast a pace to such searing earthquakes of global change? And yet, for most of us, what we do on any given day, and what we are directly aware of, is circumscribed by the private orbits in which we live. Our visions and our persons are oftentimes limited by the close-up scenes of our jobs, our families, our neighborhoods, our countries, and even our individual lives are determined, at least in part, that forces that emanate from far beyond our immediate locales. Thus, a few examples. An investment bank merges or falls in New York, and a woman in Durban finds it increasingly difficult to to keep up with her escalating mortgage payments. An oil discovery in South Sudan might mean that an enterprising young business school graduate in Nigeria gets a coveted promotion and raise, while her sister in Chad finds herself kidnapped and forced into service by a warlord determined to gain access to the precious black gold. A pharmaceutical merger in Britain might mean the price of AIDS drugs drops, thus saving hundreds of lives, at the same time that hundreds of people face job losses or cuts. This scattered handful of examples is meant to demonstrate that neither the life of an individual nor the history of a society can be understood in isolation. Each is impacted by the other. The well-being that some African women enjoy and the suffering that others endure are direct reflections of the ups and downs of the societies in which they live. The patterns of their lives reflect, in miniature, the course of world history. Every woman lives from one generation to the next in some society. Each woman also lives out her individual biography. By the very act of living, she contributes, however minutely, to the shaping of her society and to the course of history, even as she herself is made by society and its historical push and shove. It is difficult, however, for many of us to grasp the exact interplay between the changes in our individual lives and the broader structural changes that our societies undergo, between our individual biographies and the long stream of history, between our individual selves and the larger world. And herein, I think, lies the importance of African women's thought leadership in the 21st century. The most powerful definition of a thought leader is a person who is able to understand the larger historical scene in terms of its meaning for both the inner life of the individual, for both the inner life of the individual and the trajectory of their lives, and the grand sweep of history. This type of leader is able to grasp history and biography and the relationship between the two. Those who recognize this task and its promise are the people that we honor with the title of thought leaders. The 20th century and the 21st is so fortunate to have such pioneering thought leaders, and this list is by no means extensive. Such women as Onyeka Oyewumi, Patricia McFadden, Pamela Paula, Demetria Erasmus, Shireen Hassim, Ife Amadiyume, just to name a small number. These intellectuals have had the capacity to shift from one perspective to another, from the political to the psychological, from an examination of a single family to the comparative assessment of national budgets of the world, from considerations of an oil industry to studies of contemporary poetry. They have been able to give us insight into matters that range from the most impersonal and remote transformations to the most intimate features of the human self, and to see the relations between the two. That, in brief, is why it is by means of African women's thought leadership that we can hope to grasp not only what is going on in the world, but to understand what is happening within ourselves, to grasp the intersections between our individual biographies and the forces of history. We, on the continent and in the diaspora, have been blessed with such a high caliber of thought leadership that our expectations for the future are also very high. We urgently need leaders that can give us insights into both the personal troubles of our age and the public issues of social structure. By personal troubles, again, I reiterate, those things that occur within the life of the individual and within the range of their immediate relations with others, with the self and those limited areas of social life of which we are directly and personally impacted. Public issues, of course, have to do with matters that transcend these local environments and the individual and the range of the inner life. They have to do with the structures and institutions of society as a whole. What then are the major issues confronting African women thought leaders in the 21st century? How do we interface, what issues profoundly interface with private struggles in individual lives and larger issues of social structure? One of the issues that I identify and would like to speak in the remainder of this lecture, as very, very pressing, an issue that bridges the larger realm of social structure in the interpersonal world is that of sexuality, particularly as it interfaces with patriarchy and various forms of either compulsory heterosexuality or coerced heterosexuality. I choose the words compulsory heterosexuality and coerced or coercive heterosexuality very carefully. It is not that I feel there is anything wrong with the notion of LGBT rights or homophobia, or that I'm avoiding these terms in any way. Rather, by use of these terms, what I would like to do is find concepts that allow us to bring under one umbrella a number of different forms of violence and discrimination in ways that allow us to see and appreciate and understand their specificities and differences, at the same time understanding the common dynamics that underlay them. Let us consider a few concrete examples. On February 19th of this year, Uganda passed an anti-pornography law. The law not only banned pornography, it also outlawed what was called suggestive music and indecent clothing, specifically and only on women. The law bans women from revealing their thighs, breasts, and buttocks, and from dressing in a manner that will, quote, sexually excite. When Uganda's Ethics and Integrity Minister proposed the law, he said that women who wore anything above the knee should be arrested. He was quoted as saying, quote, any attire which exposes intimate parts of the human body, especially areas that are of erotic function, is outlawed. Anything above the knee is outlawed. If a woman wears a miniskirt, we will arrest her, end quote. The act has been called the miniskirt ban and has sparked off a series of violent acts against women in public places. Tina Musia, Executive Director at the Center for Domestic Violence Prevention in Kampala, reported that since the bill has passed, there have been daily reports of women falling victims to mobs of men assaulting them and addressing them, as well as sexually harassing them and making public places generally unsafe. Rita Achiro, the Executive Director of the Uganda Women's Network, a rights advocacy